I think it's important, as we're thinking about the work of multiple stakeholders, recognizing that need for funding and for additional resources. We've known for a long time as the international community that education is traditionally underfunded during humanitarian responses and receives just about 2% of overall funds. Education Cannot Wait, or ECW, was established exactly to ensure that children get opportunities to the education and to the future they deserve. Supported by donors like the UK and the Canadian government, ECW has actually been one of the few funds that's been able to really rally around and try to meet the needs of refugees and other particularly vulnerable communities during the COVID-19 response in education. I'm really pleased to turn to Yasmine Sherif, the Director of Education Cannot Wait, to tell us more about their response.
Thank you very much, Becky. And thank you, UNHCR and Canada and the UK for inviting Education Cannot Wait. Thank you, the UNHCR Special Envoy, Angelina, for a very inspiring opening. And thank you all great ministers in countries where we work, like Cameroon and Kenya, very soon, and also private sector. So Education Cannot Wait, we are a global fund. We don't implement. This is very important. The ones that implement on the ground is UNHCR, it's UNESCO, it's UNICEF, it's all the civil society. They are doing the real work on the ground. What we do is to utilize resources to leverage a new way of working together. But there's no competition. We bring everyone together and we focus together on those who are left furthest behind and advocating for refugee education. Because refugees is, from our perspective, and we all know, the ones left furthest behind from achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. And why is it so? I mean, look at this. You are a refugee, has been dispossessed in every single possible way. Whether it is they lose their home country, they have to cross an international border, often fleeing with barely the clothes on their body. And then they're in a new country where they may not always be the top priority because they are not the nationals of the country. And that's so wonderful to hear today how Cameroon and Kenya and many others are doing their best to treat refugees as their own nationals. But what we often see is that refugees have difficulties accessing public education, be part of the national plans, and therefore are left to fend for themselves. So they're clearly amongst those who are left furthest behind as we try to create a more fairer world, also socioeconomically and in future hope and possibilities. So as a result of this, Education Cannot Wait has moved forward very fast in response to COVID-19, and thanks to generous contributions from Canada, from UK, from the US, from private sector and others. And we had the first round already in April, which was a record time. And we used Martin Luther King's quote, "The fierce urgency of now." We have to move now. It's not about next year or 10 years from now. That's why we are very impatient. We had the first round in April, but then we said only some of that reached refugees. So in the second round, we're going to dedicate it completely to refugees. And we work very closely with civil society, focusing on refugees, and of course with UNHCR as the great refugee agency. And we identified 10 countries. Kenya is one of them, Cameroon is another one, where we will focus exclusively and delivering, investing about $20 million in the days to come, and continuously, of course, with more investments. What do these investments look like? There's distance learning, accelerated learning, home-based teaching, provision of school materials, technology where this is possible. I mean, large part of sub-Saharan Africa don't have the infrastructure. You go to a country like Central African Republic, go outside Kabul in Afghanistan, there is no infrastructure for technology. So we take that into account. But also, and this has been mentioned here by Baroness Sag and by many others, the importance of mental health and psychosocial services to deal with all the traumas while you are in a refuge and also accessing learning. So hygiene, the mental health, sanitation, and protection above all. These are part of the investments that education cannot wait makes, the financial investments together with all our colleagues in the UN agencies, civil society, and not the least the ministers of education in country with whom we work very closely. Now, final question then, what do you learn from that? We all know that in a crisis, you have two choices. One is to succumb and just give up, or take that crisis and go to a better place and build back better afterwards. And I think there are two things we are learning from the COVID-19 crisis for refugees, is that there's a technology divide. And that's why it's so wonderful to see Vodafone and many other private sector companies coming in. But there's the technology divide. And we now realize what huge part of the world, including the refugees in those countries, cannot access technology because of socio-economic inequity, which that's the reality. You don't have the infrastructure, and therefore you cannot benefit from technology. And that then deepens the education divide. So that's the dark part of it. But then again, you never give up. And refugees never give up, as we could hear Ahmad and Bahati here so strongly plugging forward despite what they are challenged with. So we have to take it to a new level and build back better. And we see the opportunity here for how we can improve education on the move, as we say, for those who are fleeing, for those who have left their home countries, through technology when they have access. We've done that with refugees on the Greek islands and asylum seekers, where we can use WhatsApp and radio, and in other parts of the world where it's possible, and also find new creative ways of delivering education for those who are constantly moving or are not living in the homes of origin. And finally, it's a wonderful opportunity, especially with everyone here today, is to be able to do the advocacy for refugees and lift them up and make them seen and visible. They are left furthest behind, but in reality, they should be at the forefront of our conscience, because they are the ones that will rebuild a world torn apart in so many ways today. And that's why I'm also happy and congratulate UNHCR for the UK's pledge today. I'm very happy. We so enjoy working with UNHCR. We enjoy being part of UNESCO's Global Coalition for Education, coordinating and bringing us all together. And most of all, happy to see great education ministers and the most wonderful resilient refugees on earth. Thank you very much from Education Cannot Wait.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Yasmine. We're really always so pleased to hear from ECW and how you're driving forward some of the critical response. One exciting thing to note is that today is actually the first day of the Humanitarian Education Accelerators Bootcamp. The HEA is funded by ECW, and it looks at, in this time of COVID, building on a challenge call which was launched by the EdTech Hub and the Education Alliance. Over 80 partners from around the world put forward solutions, and that includes solutions from refugee community-based organisations themselves. And the bootcamp, which is starting this week, is bringing together a group of those partners to further understand approaches in particularly distance and online learning and data collection during COVID. And I wanted to mention that particularly because I understand that a lot of the participants from that bootcamp are watching this on YouTube and are contributing very positively to the discussion. So thank you again to ECW for that.